This is a groovy party, man.
Yeah,
I
brother,
can
like
dig it.
solid. Right on.
Hey, man, what's your name?
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Calvin, and thank God it's
Friday.
Yeah, thank God it's Friday, man. And March 1st.
Did it come in like a lion or a lamb?
Well, if you think 50 degrees is
It's pretty,
a lion,
yeah, it's pretty lambish. But isn't it bad if it comes in like a lamb? Doesn't it go out like a
yeah,
lion? Isn't that the deal?
well, Sandy, I would say, and for those of you who may not know it by now, that's my co-host Sandy Williams. You know, Sandy, it's the warmest February on record. It's the warmest winter on record. I don't think we should think that it's going to all of a sudden change. You said a little earlier about a pattern that we may be in. I'm leaning more to it's not just Wisconsin. It's been warm all across the nation.
Well, every year, just about and when they keep annual records for heat, each year has been hotter than the prior year, and each year has been setting a record. So, maybe there's something to this global weather change concept, huh?
I just don't, for the life of me, understand anybody looking at this without a jaundiced eye, Sandy, shouldn't be worried, right? I mean, we're talking, there was only one cold snap the entire winter in the state of Wisconsin. And, it was 3 days where we were zero or right around. I've been living long enough to know that's not the way it's been.
Yeah, I spent all this time putting up I have 100 by 60-foot ice rink I put up. I put up the walls for it and everything, and I can look out the window and see the walls, but no ice. I never had a chance to lay down any ice and have an ice rink. So that's pretty much an unusual circumstance.
Well, Sandy, and you've done that for many years now. How many years has it been that you haven't been able to do that?
This is the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It-
it's just it's clear that at least the current trend, I mean, you can say, well, who knows what's going to happen in the long term, but year after year is beginning to turn into something like the long term. So, I mean, for annual weather records, we have cold bursts and everyone says, see, it's not really global warming because it's frigid cold out. But if you look at the annual weather data, each year has been warmer than the prior one.
Sandy, and for people and businesses who rely on that cold weather and the winter weather, it's a bad harbinger.
Just think what would have happened, back in the day at the turn of the last century, people had ice boxes, okay? They didn't have refrigerators,
Right.
and they had ice that was cut into big cubes that was delivered to them, and that ice came from lakes all around Wisconsin, around Milwaukee. They would cut the ice off the surface of the lake, put it in barns that were lined with hay so that there'd be insulation to keep the ice blocks cold. And so that was at least one of the sources. That was the cheapest source of ice. They could have big compressors that could make ice, but mainly they cut about a lake. So this year you'd be out of luck. If you had an ice box, you'd be out of luck for ice.
Sandy. Hey, Calvin, you remember those times, don't you?
I can't say I do.
Sandy, the lake didn't freeze over.
Right.
So
none of the lakes froze over.
So, well, a small lake must have froze over because I saw Eric Hovde.
Oh, that's right. The ice fishing guys. Yeah.
Eric Hovde, the guy who's running against Congresswoman, Senator Tammy Baldwin. He was in a lake on yesterday, sitting in this ice. I guess they cracked a little bit open so he could sit in and prove to the people that he's a Wisconsinite. And then he challenged Senator Baldwin to do the same.
It's not that hard. You shuffle your feet out on the ice, and then you open the door. And mainly, what you'd have to be able to do to ice fish, I think, is sit and drink schnapps.
Well, he wasn't
I think
looking.
it's a schnapps drinking contest more
Well,
than it's a
he wasn't
fishing
looking.
event.
Yeah, but he wasn't looking to do any fishing. He wanted to prove a point. The Democrats are saying he's in California. He lives there. He's got everything there. And he wanted to prove to the people by sitting in this, little lake with where they had to crack the ice. And he's doing this commercial. See, I'm from Wisconsin. And, well, whoever
like-
came up with that.
Yeah, sounds like proof positive, right?
Proof
now they'll
positive.
find out that it was all done on a movie set someplace in Hollywood.
Let's bring Al from Milwaukee. I know he remembers the ice box. He probably still has one. Hey, Al, what's going on?
I do. I have one in my garage.
Yeah.
But you guys forgetting what season it is.
What's that?
Season is this? Starting on the 11th of March. It's track season. Indoor track runs from the 11th of March until April. Then everything is outdoors. When we hit outdoors, it's always cold and it's always wet and it snows until May. So don't let this weather fool you.
Hey, Al.
Yeah.
Hey, Al. It's the warmest winter on record. It's the warmest February on record. What makes you think March is going to all of a sudden change?
I coached for 50 years, track and field, and every year we have warm weather in February and the beginning of March, and by the time we hit outdoor season, which is the 1st of April, it snows.
Hey, Sandy,
And
you want to
kids
take
are out there,
a
little
crack at
skimpy.
this guy, Sandy?
Well, no, I got to agree with him because I coach rowing, right? And so I go out on the Milwaukee River in March, and I can tell you that I will freeze my tail off on the Milwaukee River
Yeah,
in
but
March,
you
and
guys-
it will be colder than you can imagine. Sitting still in a boat, cruising
Yeah, but
down the
that's-
river.
Guys, that's not following a record-breaking winter warmth and February warmth. It's not the usual. It's something that's different.
I'm with Al. I'm with Al. I know really well that as soon as you go outdoors to start the workouts, it'll get colder than you can believe. You'll be running around in sweatpants and wishing it was more.
Hey, Sandy.
Yeah.
The daffodils and the tulips are coming up.
Well, they're fools too.
Hey, Al, you really aren't trying to sell that, are you?
Yes, I've been living through it for over 50 years.
Well, what else can we expect from a guy who's still got an ice box, Calvin? Probably in the kitchen.
He said it was in the garage.
I know,
but
I'm challenging that. It's probably in the kitchen. He's probably.
I can remember. Listen, I can remember. I can remember Wisconsin Ice and Coal people coming with hooks and big cubes of ice, not to my house, but to the neighbor's house.
Hey.
We had a guy with a wagon bringing ice down the street, and you could buy a 50-pound block for 15 cents. And we had 2 ice boxes in the house when I was a kid.
Well, I saw that in the
That's how
movies,
it was
man.
Delivered a horse-drawn wagon. No, this was true up and down the streets of Detroit.
Hey, Calvin's laughing. I mean, I saw that in the movie. I don't quite remember, that time.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. Hey, Al, thank you very much for the call. Sandy,
Hey, I just want to I want to alert the people of Wisconsin, however, that the Earl that I know is back. I'm looking at him and I'm seeing a gray beard and everything. So the bet has grown out. Earl had a bet with Gilbert Brown and I forget what it was, but he lost it. And as a result, he was dyed back to his youthful colors.
Hey, Sandy, let me, who was it? If
You
I look
changing
at,
this? You changing the subject? Are you?
man, it's a little easier to maintain this way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you
You don't have to
know,
worry about rain.
we got a lot that we're going to be talking about today, Sandy. And, I got a lot of different subjects to talk about. They're going to be all over the map. We're certainly going to talk about some politics. We have to talk about politics, because it's always one of the most important subjects to talk about. But, Sandy, I wanted to, do you remember 1969 and the first man on the moon?
Yeah, in
Do you remember
July.
his name? You remember his name?
His name. Oh wow.
I know you'll remember it after we take a short
I will.
pause.
Yeah. Huh.
So what I want
First,
to
one
ask,
step for mankind. Yeah. Giant,
giant step for mankind,
yeah.
one small step for man, a giant step for
Step for
mankind.
mankind. Right.
Do you believe we were really on the moon?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I never did buy the Hollywood set kind of a thing. No.
Well, there are people who still don't believe that, right?
Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So we've just had a couple of contraptions. Private companies sent a contraption to the moon, and then government sent a contraption to the moon, and neither one of them are working.
Well, I think
gotta ask
the government's contraption went on the rocket of the private vendor, right? So one rocket had a payload that included government stuff and private stuff, and none of it worked. It landed on the south. It landed on the south pole of the moon, and it lasted about a day instead of a much longer time.
So we're going to talk about that. 844-967-2789 on a warm morning here, Sandy, in Wisconsin. You can join us at 844-967-2789. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host, Sandy Williams.
Oh, God's sake, sure. How could I forget?
Shaw.
Want some whiskey in your water, sugar in your tea? What's all this crazy question they're asking me? This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't want to see. Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to.
So that's some music you can bob your head to this early in the morning, Sandy.
Absolutely. It bobbed my brain back into remembering Neil Armstrong as the first man on the moon.
Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. Sandy, it's not just that Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon. There were 12 successful moon landings and 12 men who walked on the moon, not just Neil Armstrong. And so for many people who even today don't believe that we actually were on the moon, the real question, Sandy, that I wanted to pose is, with technology having advanced as far as it has, we were on the moon in 1969. A man actually walked on the moon and returned. How is it possible that the private moon landers, there's one that's there now, but it broke its leg and it's having trouble, and so it's about to end. We just sent one there, and it fell over on its side, and it's no longer. What is that? The technology has advanced to the degree you would think that we shouldn't have any problem sending a contraption to the moon and working with all the money and all the technology. Were the people in 1969, those scientists and the people who were able to send man to the moon, a little more advanced than what we're dealing with now?
I don't know. I was just thinking about it. 1957 is Sputnik. We don't even have rockets that can do anything like that in 57. And 12 years later, we've got someone on the moon. Maybe it did happen. Maybe it did all happen in Hollywood. No, no. No, I mean, I can remember. I can remember sitting in the people I was with. I think it was July 19th, sitting watching the moon landing on TV.
Well, the whole world was watching it.
Yeah, it was an incredible event, and the rockets they sent up then were huge, bigger than the ones they deal with now. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they can't do it. Back in the 60s, they had an immense army of people focused on it. I mean, NASA was a truly big organization, and we were sinking vast amounts of federal dollars into it. We have nowhere near that level of commitment to it today.
Yeah,
And
but
we've handed it off to private ventures who are obviously trying to go on a cost-effective way. I'm sure there was nothing cost-effective about our moon landing in 1969.
Well, wouldn't you think the advancement of technology, Sandy, would certainly eliminate, all of the different manpower that they were using way back then, and the technology itself would replace that? I see
think.
Calvin. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think we took our foot off the pedal in terms of investing money in spacecraft sometime in the 80s when we abandoned the Apollo program. And maybe everything went on hold in terms of developing the kind of infrastructure and technology. Obviously, our computer technology is much, much greater now than it was then. That's for sure.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make, Sandy. I mean, we're not talking about, sending man to Mars. We're talking about the moon. We were there, and at a time when I remember, as you well remember, the little cones that were the capsules.
Yeah, when they land in the ocean. Yeah.
Your garage is probably bigger than those capsules. And yet they were able to send that and make that all happen. I'm just curious. Again, Sandy, with the advancement of technology, and if this is a harbinger, they have to really be kind of upset that this thing has died, because it sets back all the things they're talking about, wouldn't you say? With man landing on the moon again?
Well, I mean, I guess it had sort of a buckety landing that, and then the device that was going to move around on the ground broke a leg, right? So,
Right.
Which is the admonition you give to someone when they're going to go on the theater, right? Go out on the stage, break
a leg. Yeah.
break a leg. Yeah, but apparently this spacecraft actually did it.
But two things, Sandy. The private industry also have a contraption there, and it broke its leg, so it's not working.
Right.
And then the government itself, the same thing. So when people say let's let the private industry handle it, they both failed in this instance.
Well,
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's go to Tom from LA. Good morning to you, Tom. You say what?
Good morning, Earl. Good morning, Sandy. First, we the people ultimately are the government, not the corporations, and we need to wake up and realize that, and we need to get money completely out of politics and lobbyists out of politics. Second, I'll tell you, there was a film probably 20 years ago now called "The Inconvenient Truth" by Al Gore. And I would say everything that Al Gore said in that movie is exactly what's happening. It was a nice warning in terms of climate catastrophe and what's going on there. My next point is that we're just really lucky that the Hoover Dam wasn't built by a private industry. that it was actually done by the tax dollars from we the people to actually make a difference. And what the previous presidents had done before Ronald Reagan came in and said that private does it better than we the people government. So I just hope that people realize that. I mean, I really would love to see all these billionaires. I would love to see them go to the moon. I would love to see Elon and Branson and what's his face from Amazon. I'd love to see them all go to the moon or go into space and see how it works for them. I'm really looking forward to that day when the billionaires go there.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. Everybody else, hang on. It's Friday. It means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. News, weather, and sports up next on 540 AM WAUK and 101 FM The Show.
when it's over, so they say it'll rain a sunny day. I know, shining down like water. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain?
All right. Hey, Sandy, we could hear that.
You could hear me?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Don't
They
do
asked
that again.
my shower tells me not to sing. I should know better.
Hey, Calvin, didn't you warn him? Only joking, man.
Hey, I was just let him feel into the music.
Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join. It didn't sound bad, Sandy. You made sure you whispered. You're like me. Singing is not our talents.
When I was in the choir, they told me to just move my mouth.
hey, but in this case, we can see you. And also hear you. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host, Sandy Williams. And we were talking about, the moon and our conquest on the moon. Let's go to the phone lines and let's go to Cindy from Appleton. Good morning to you, Cindy. Your thoughts?
Well, good morning. I have three things because I have it on some pretty good authority from someone from the NASA program, so to speak. That was at one of my meetings a couple weeks ago that told us that they are sending something to one of the satellites of Saturn soon because they want to try to tap into it and see what's in it. They think there's water in this satellite. Also, they're talking about asteroids. They're talking about bringing asteroids into our orbit system so they can start mining asteroids because they found several asteroids that are very mineral heavy. How in God's name they're planning on doing that is beyond me. But I'm a little surprised with Tom, who seems to be kind of anti-corporation. I don't want to give private enterprises any kind of ability to do whatever they want in space. I mean, they have pretty much destroyed our planet here with their greed and their lack of caring about resource, extractions. I don't want to send them into space to do the same thing.
Well, Sandy, you want to respond to, anything that Cindy had to say?
The notion of granting private industry the right to mine has been sort of time immemorial, going back to the kings, right? And I sort of think Norway and a couple of those countries did it right, which is they retained ownership of all the mineral rights. So every Norwegian citizen has an interest in the Norwegian sovereign fund that's equal to about $250,000. So my hope would be that the United States would look at a lesson like Norway and say, maybe we shouldn't give away these mineral rights in quite the manner that we do, and we ought to retain for the people some of the benefits. So, Norway's is a private-public thing, right? There's private entities that are extracting the oil, but they're paying the royalties to the people.
Sandy, when that was done in Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, and when that was also done in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi,
and actually back in Iran in 1953, Mogadishu. That's what cost Mogadishu his position was. He nationalized Aramco, which was the Iranian oil company that had licenses with British Petroleum. And so
we were opposed to nations doing exactly what you just said that they were doing in Norway.
Well, in Norway, what they did is they retained the ownership of the royalty rights, and they allowed private entities to take the oil out, but the royalties were all earned by the people. So it's kind of a combination public-private thing.
Yeah, but we didn't allow that in these other nations as it related, with their oil. Let's go to David from Mequon. Good morning to you, Dave. You say what?
Morning, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call, Earl. Really quickly, in response to Tom, when he was talking about the inconvenient truth with Al Gore, I'm going to cite a article from the Investors Daily, and this is from August 3rd of 2017, and in it, it talks about Al Gore. And there was an analysis by the National Center for Public Policy Research. And keep in mind, Al Gore added 33 solar panels to his house. He lives in a house that's 10,000 square feet, has this ginormous pool. The average amount of electricity, even with his solar panels that he has at his home currently, consumes more electricity in 1 year than the average American family uses in 21 years. So I just want to point out, if Tom doesn't believe me, he can certainly look it up himself.
So Dave, I guess I would ask you, what does that have to do with the conversation about, global climate change?
So we worry about global climate change, right? So at the end of the day, we know that we've had various periods of warming periods. The medieval was a warming period. We had a cooling period. Actually, in the 1940s was actually a cooling period as well. From the 1930s, when we had a tremendous, the Dust Bowl years. And the point is, we didn't start measuring CO2 until the Keeling curve came out in the 1950s. And that was started on with Hawaii on the volcano over there. I can't think of the name of the volcano. Anyway, that being said, there's been evidence that temperature is what also drives the CO2 levels to go up and higher and lower, depending on what that is. Now, granted, we are adding some CO2.
So Dave, not to worry,
but it's
not to worry. Is that what you're saying?
It's
No,
not
I think what Dave is trying to say is that he's trying to minimize the extent to which human
Yes.
conduct has affected it. And there's obviously a scientific debate about the extent at the margin to which human conduct is affecting it. But I don't think there is any argument about whether human conduct is affecting it, okay? The question is how much. And obviously there have been cycles of warming and cooling in the past. One thing that, Dave, you're ignoring on the CO2 measurement is that scientists have found other ways to measure CO2 from natural byproducts of CO2 in the environment that predate the direct measurement of CO2 in the environment. So I think that scientists have been fairly successful at trying to replicate what the CO2 level in the environment was prior to the period of scientific direct measurement of it. And I think there has been clear evidence of its increase. And, there are various explanations of it, but I think neither you nor I, nor any of us in the radio network here are probably expert enough to understand all the nuances of the science of global warming. But scientists seem to have a relatively unanimous view of what is going on. So I would simply refer ourselves to the scientists.
What I would say to you is this: as growing up as a kid, I remember when we were going to have the next great cooling period in the 1970s. If you remember, they were pushing the fact that the Earth was going to be freezing and what have you back in the 1970s. In 1979, it should be noted that that was the coldest year that we had in the 20th century. And if you look at the satellite data and everything else that they use, they've been using that as a number, a basis, as to actually determination as to temperature rise from a specific date. And the only thing is, and I'll point this out to Sandy as well, the only countries that had accurate data with temperatures back in the, I should say in the 19th century, was Europe and the United States. The rest of the world was not doing measurements of temperatures or anything of that nature. And the fact is, let me finish.
Well, no, Dave, thank you very much for the call. We've got a bank of callers. People can believe what they want to believe. and they're entitled to that. But clearly, as we stated earlier, with what is happening, people can ignore what they want to ignore. They have a right to that. Let's go to Stephen from Green Bay. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Morning, guys. I will tell you, I was also singing to the CCR, and it was a nice little Sandy Williams harmony in my car. So thank you for that. With that being said, I think we see a trend, especially on the Republican side of the aisle, of them discrediting science, whether it's with global warming or whether it's with vaccines. And I think for many reasons, it's a dangerous precedent to be setting. It costs a lot of lives with the current epidemic and with the vaccines. And it's going to continue to cost lives with the global warming of not just humans, but all species on Earth. We're losing ice in Antarctica at rapid rates. And a lot of the animals up in that area rely on the ice sheets up there. It's not normal in Wisconsin to have a 72-degree day in the middle of February. I should not be wearing shorts in the middle of February in the state of Wisconsin. It's alarming. And when I was in grade school, I was taught about global warming. And at that point, I didn't see it. But now I feel like every day it's getting more and more evident that we are in a warming crisis. And if we don't educate ourselves and turn the tide, we are going to ruin our planet. And that's not me just being, dramatic or whatever. Scientists, I think, will support that if we don't change what we're doing, we are going to ruin our planet.
Hey, Stephen, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Mark from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, Mark. Your thoughts?
Good morning, Earl. Ironically, I watched a film last night called Chasing Ice. And it's a documentary made in 2012, and so that's 11 years ago, or almost 12 years ago already. And the person went out and photographed all the ice flows in Greenland, Iceland, Alaska, and other places. And he did time-lapse photography, and he rigged cameras to take pictures of these areas over a several-year period. And anybody who doesn't, and his idea was to show people in pictures versus, presenting data that, people don't want to deal with, take the time or understand. Anyway, I encourage everybody to watch it. It costs $3. I think Amazon Prime has it. And for doubters, they at one point he shows that they can go into the core ice, spanning thousands of years, and analyze the gas in the core ice. And this is real. It's science. It's not debatable. The atmospheres change, and they show when humans arrived on the scene, or when the Industrial Revolution started, how it all started to change. So, this is real, and people that can't or don't want to accept it, they're beyond ignorant.
Thank you very much for the call. 844-967-2789. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host, Sandy Williams. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
Coming down the sunny day.
Waukesha's home for Matt and Air on Air.
You need skill and a little luck to play the game of pool, and you could say one cue-making company in Wisconsin has both. Schmelke Cues in Rice Lake is the oldest pool cue maker in the U.S. and remains a family-owned, third-generation operated business. Schmelke started as a one-man shop in the 1940s. Now more than 20 employees work at the facility. So do you know which state has the most cue-making manufacturers? Is it Maryland, Minnesota, Wisconsin? The answer coming up. Pool is an old game, and the cues similar to the ones used to play today were created in the late 1600s in Northern Europe. Pool came to America in the 19th century. So did you guess which state currently has 4 of the top 5 cue manufacturers? It is Wisconsin. And Schmelke Cues in Rice Lake has also been inducted into the International Cue Makers Hall of Fame, making this a worldwide slice of Wisconsin. I'm Terry Barr.
Now I don't hardly know her, but I think I could love her. Crimson and clover. Will she come walking over?
All right. Hey, Sandy, I had to dust off the old 45. 45 for Crimson and Clover.
I can remember as a kid, people having boxes filled with 45 RPM records, and you'd go to a party, and people would bring their boxes of 45s.
You know they're back.
They are?
Yeah, man. Albums and 45s. You know, I got rid of that stuff a long time. You still got those things?
No. Well,
Yeah,
I didn't have any pocket money to buy things like that, but 45s were like, there was one song on each side, you know,
Yeah. Well, but those things are worth a lot of money now. They're retro and albums and those things. Anyway, Sandy, FDA warns against smartwatches and rings that claim to measure blood sugar without needles. Let me ask you, Sandy, these things are on the market. They're everywhere. And how does it get on the market? And now the FDA comes back now after it's out and warns the people about things that are on the market already. I thought the purpose of this, of the FDA, was to prevent those things from coming on the market until they knew the inherent dangers of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether watches end up being considered medical devices, or whether you can get watches that claim to do things that they can't do, and it doesn't matter because the FDA doesn't regulate them. And I suspect the latter is true, that a watch is a piece of apparel, and it's not necessarily viewed as a medical device. And so the fact that it makes a claim might not matter. I don't know. I personally thought that the FDA did regulate things that were going to make medical claims like that. And if you were going to make a claim that you could do it, it had to be backed up by testing that the FDA approved. I'm surprised.
It says smartwatches and rings that claim to measure blood sugar levels for medical purposes without piercing the skin could be dangerous and should be avoided. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration warned on Wednesday. The caution applies to any watch or ring, regardless of brand, that claims to measure blood glucose levels in non-invasive way. The agency said, the FDA said it has not authorized any such device. Sandy, okay, well then how did the device get out there? How do these things get out amongst the people? And businesses can make money, and the people and the commercials and the people purchase these things, and then the FDA comes afterwards. It's not just this, there are other things. And now the FDA is saying, hey, these things, we haven't approved them yet. How do they get on the market?
Like I said, it must not fall under a category that statutorily requires FDA prior approval. I mean, the FDA operates pursuant to statutory authority, and it must be that the statutory authority they have doesn't give them prior approval for things like watches.
But government creates the statutory authority, right?
Well,
Elected officials.
Congress does, yeah.
Yes, right. So that is the reason that these things are allowed to come onto the market is our Congress people don't do their due diligence. Is it safe to say that?
Well, it sounds like this ought to be a wake-up call. The fact that the FDA comes out and says this might suggest that the FDA's authority ought to be broadened so
Right.
that the public is not subject to being fooled by claims that aren't backed up by proper FDA kind of authorization.
You know, Sandy, it's not just this. It's more and more things and so the FDA, Sandy, we do know the idea of it is certainly the government needs to have that presence in the marketplace. No question, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Adam Smith, everyone who's even a staunch market proponent would suggest that markets need to be regulated so that they operate correctly. And so part of that regulation should be to protect the public health and welfare with respect to claims made, right? We're no longer in the era of the snake oil salesperson, running around in a covered wagon selling stuff, making claims that have no basis. That's what the FDA was designed to avoid.
Sandy, I had a pharmacist on yesterday, and we were talking about supplements. And I said to him, they sell supplements all over the place. And then we buy supplements thinking that they're going to have the things in them that we need. And yet they are filled with all sorts of things that that don't do anything to help us. And his response was, well, it's kind of like snake oil salespeople. The
Right.
supplements, it's a wild, wild west. Well, Sandy, who protects us from this stuff, man?
Well, obviously the FDA would be the agency that would protect us from that, and there is a fine line. I mean, you don't want to have chewing gum that's necessarily pre-approved, but you do want to make sure that things that are making medical claims. Now, supplements are very careful actually about the things that they claim. They have to walk a fine line. They can't make promises about what can be achieved, so they have to kind of like hint at what it is that might get supported by it. And they all usually have disclaimers as well that suggest that it's not promised, right?
Well, Sandy, when we go in and we're looking for an iron supplement, we're thinking that what we're purchasing is going to give us some iron that we need, that we're lacking. And shouldn't we expect that to be what they're selling?
Well, like I said, it depends on the nature of what you're buying. Supplements is the Wild West kind of thing. People buy thistleweeds this and the milkweed that, and it's all supposed to do things, and it probably does, but it's not clear.
All right, 844-967-2789. Friday with my co-host Sandy Williams and I. News, weather, and sports on the Earl Ingram Show.
and yet you seem to hurt me more and more. But each hurt makes my love stronger than before. I know flowers grow from rain, but how can love grow from pain? Ain't that peculiar, a peculiarity? Ain't that peculiar, baby? Peculiar as can
All
be.
right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. It's 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. It's Friday. That means Friday's my co-host, Sandy Williams. So, Sandy, Gaza spiraling, unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. You know, I did a little research, Sandy, and in the war in Ukraine and Russia, 2 years and counting, 10,000 Ukrainian citizens have been killed in a full-out war for 2 years with the second most powerful military in the world, the Russian military, and in Ukraine. 10,000 citizens have been killed. In Gaza, in 4 months, 30,000 and counting, Sandy. And famine is setting in. And yesterday, 100 citizens killed while trying to get food. And I have to say that our nation has to play a bigger role, even though the rest of the world is saying we have to address this. Our nation has to, have a stronger voice in what is happening here, Sandy. What transpired yesterday with a bunch of people who are starving to death, and you send in a few trucks, and people lose all humanity, Sandy, when they're starving to death, right?
Yeah,
It
I mean,
becomes
it was turned into a mass riot, a hungry people, just crazed to get to food. I mean, that's more a statement of the horrible circumstance that exists there than it is that actual event. I think that what America needs to do is save Israel from itself. I think they need to try and intervene. I think Netanyahu is leading Israel down a terrible path that is going to expose Israel to much more risk than the kind of danger that he is trying to eradicate in Hamas. I think that really, literally, I think Israel needs to get saved from itself, and I think there's a substantial number of Israelis who would agree with that. I think that what we've got now is a government that's acting through its emergency powers, war powers, in a manner that is horrifying, and it's going to be basically putting Israel in a difficult situation with respect to the rest of the world. And that's not where Israel needs to be. Israel doesn't need to be in that position.
Sandy, these numbers are horrific. Again, in 4 months, 30,000 citizens have been killed, contrast to a full-out war in Ukraine, 10,000 citizens. One citizen is too much, but clearly to see what is transpiring and the world is calling for something to be done. And the only nation that can really do anything to kind of change this, Sandy, is our nation. If anybody has any leverage on Israel, it's the United States of America.
I guess I'm not privy exactly to the extent, but I'm confident that we have a great deal to say to Israel about the kind of support that we might give them or not give them. I'm a great fan of Israel, but I fear for Israel in that I think, like I said, I think its government is overplaying its hand to the point where it's going to put itself into something closer to a pariah status rather than the status that it needs and deserves in the world.
Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. What are your thoughts on what is happening in Israel and in Gaza, and what continues to happen as the rest of the world continues to say, hey, these people are starving to death. And again, innocent people are starving to death and being slaughtered. And yet, we it's almost as if we don't see them as people. I know it's not a popular thing to discuss, but for heaven's sakes, we have to do a better job. Joe Biden himself is really, at risk of not being reelected president of the United States if he's not willing to do something. And as you stated, Sandy, he's probably limited in what he can do and can't do, but he's got to be willing to speak out publicly and say, is it Netanyahu, Sandy? Is it the fact that we allow one man? It's similar to what's happening in our nation with Donald Trump. There's this guy who's able to control all these other people, one guy, and yet people follow him. It's the same kind of with Netanyahu. He's one guy, Sandy.
Well, he's been in power for almost 15 years, off and on. He clearly has the capacity to understand how to pull the levers of power to secure it, but he's always had a fragile grip on power. He's only had limited periods of time where he's had sort of something close to a consensus support amongst the Israeli people. So it's interesting. It's what's happening around the world where conservatives are able to keep a grip on government without being necessarily reflecting a majority view, but they reflect a powerful interest group that's able to exert its power.
Let me ask you, long term, can Israel stand on its own? I mean, no nation is an island. No man is an island. No nation is an island. And so, where this thing is headed, and people will certainly be talking about it long after, this thing ends. But when there are still hostages, Sandy, who are jeopardized by decisions that are being made, it's almost as if willing to sacrifice hostages. When our nation is trying to, I know Joe Biden had and the United States had said several days ago they were getting close to a ceasefire, and apparently that just has not come to fruition.
Oh yeah, I don't think hostages can be the source of public policy, and I think the United States has long taken a position that we won't negotiate over hostages, and I think that's the right position to take. So, but I think that the issues associated with the policies of Israel and our policies vis-a-vis Israel should range far beyond this question of the hostages, and it should really deal with the situation. And part of the reason there are 30,000 deaths is the situation in Gaza that existed prior to this problem. Okay, Gaza has been a problem ever since there has been Gaza, cordoned off the way it is, and populated as crowdedly as it is, and as sequestered as it is. And so that's the heart of the problem. And what we're seeing now are all the symptoms of the problem, and we need to solve it. And Israel, of all countries, needs to be a country that relies on the goodwill of the nations in the world. Because, like I said, you said, no country's an island. Well, particularly Israel can't afford to be an island, isolated island, in the environment in which it exists. And you would think that they would be doing everything they could to create an environment in the area where they live that would be sustainable. And My fear is that what Israel is involved with now is not a sustainable course of action.
You know, Sandy, and as you've stated on more than one occasion, excuse me, Benjamin Netanyahu has uh, many who disagree with him, and they have disagreed with him publicly. And they have said, as you stated, that this is causing more damage to long-term damage to our nation, than it's worth it. And many have basically said we need to try to figure out a way, an end game. You always use the term end game. Sandy, what is the end game?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think there is a sustainable end game in the course that they are currently on, and that's why I think that the United States, being as pro and supportive of Israel as they are, needs to save Israel's government from. They need to save Israel from Israel right now. The Israeli government, and they need to help moderate and temper the response that's being exercised now and to work instead in the direction of a long-range solution. Everybody's talking about a two-state solution. The only person I know that denies the notion of a two-state solution categorically is Netanyahu.
844-967-2789. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you.
My love stronger. Ain't that peculiar, baby? Peculiar as can be. Ain't that peculiar? A Maybe you think these tears I cry are tears of joy. A child can cry so much until you do everything they say. But unlike a child, my tears don't help me to get my way. I know love can last years. Look over yonder. What do you see? The sun is rising. Most definitely.
Hey, Sandy, I got to get an A+++ for the music this morning, right?
Good. It's good music. Good music. Yep, absolutely.
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number, Sandy. Congressional leaders reach a tentative deal to avoid government shutdown, but Ukraine aid stalls. you, man, you just kind of hit the nail on the head so many different times. Every time they come up with these stopgap measures, they wait until it looks as if and lead people to believe that the government is going to shut down. Now, these are people who can't have any, can't create any policy. But when their backs are against the wall and they're really concerned that, hey, if we don't get this done, all of us may lose our jobs, they can somehow come up with a stopgap. Why? After I'm a little tired of Congress not being able to sit down and hammer out a budget. It's always a couple months at a time. You know, what do you say about that, Sandy?
Well, it's broken. That this all they can create is drama. There's no policy coming out of Washington, just drama. And unfortunately, the lack of policy is policy. For instance, freezing the Ukrainian aid is definitely an international policy statement of huge significance, and it puts America into a very difficult position with all of its allies. And the credibility of America is at stake, but it doesn't seem to matter because it's going to be victimized by the paralysis of our partisan political processes. And the same is true with respect to our budget. There's lots of arm waving about deficits, right? You can't have deficits, but there's no specificity about programmatic changes to be made and prioritizations to be made to assure that deficits might be smaller. Right now, conservatives are all talking again broadly about how this in the next appropriation bills that are necessary to avoid the next shutdown, that there needs to be deficit spending reductions. Okay, but where? What is the priority? What's the discussion the American people need, which is what's important to the American people, and it can't be an across the board cut of expenditures because that won't work. There's plenty of programs that require expansion, not reduction, and so they just need to be responsible, which is apparently not what our elected officials are very good about being right now. Is responsible to look at priorities and to come up with programs.
Well, Sandy, I wonder if and our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. If you had a chance, what programs would you cut? I mean, some want to somehow look at a way to cut Medicare. Some, and we're talking about people on the right, some of them want to see cuts in child care and what they consider welfare programs. I heard Ron Johnson the other day. We've got to stop. We can't afford these programs. We've got to cut these programs. As you stated, Sandy, what programs are you talking about?
Yeah,
why won't he specify?
Right. And it's easy to talk generally, right? Nobody thinks that deficits are a good idea per se. But then the question is, okay, what are we going to do to avoid them, and what are the specific programs, and how do we start prioritizing what our government does? I mean, there are fixes, but some of the fixes involve increased revenue. It isn't just reducing. It isn't just reducing expenditures. We reduced revenue by a significant chunk during the Trump years with the Tax Reduction Act then. And the fact is that our deficits would be appreciably smaller today if we hadn't done that. Okay. So that was a big contributor to deficits.
But Sandy,
And-
go ahead.
well,
Go ahead.
and, for instance, Medicare, fixes for Medicare. Well, some of it might be increasing the premiums paid by those who receive Medicare who can afford to pay higher premiums. There are fixes to these things and they aren't all reducing expenditures, and they certainly are not just a broad arm wave of reducing all these expenditures. And if we're going to look at big programs, we better look at the defense budget as well, and we better look at the foreign policies that lead to our defense budget.
You just stole my thunder. When you talk about the defense budget, they're going to be increasing the defense budget. There's no question They're talking about the fact that we've got to replace all the munitions that we have given to Ukraine. We've got to increase the budget. They're talking about the fact that we don't have the munitions that we need to have in reserve in case something happens. We've got to increase the military budget. We've got to increase the military budget at every turn, Sandy, in the face of these deficits, which means we got to cut. Something has to be cut. That's the reality of what the debate is, Sandy. But who has the courage to say the military is the one place that we've got to look at, the waste in it, right? If we just
the military budget's gone up, what, 35% in the past short period of years, okay? It's gone up faster than, and so the military budget goes up, and it's financed how? With increased deficits, because we haven't increased our taxes in order to do these things. So, we talk about these things like, okay, let's increase the military budget because we have to. Okay, well, let's finance that. But they don't talk about financing it. So it's a deficit financed program. In fact, all of the programs, many of the new programs that we carry out are essentially deficit financed because we don't also have revenue programs to match them. Okay, and so what we need to talk about the revenue side, and it can't only be tax cuts. The only kind of revenue actions we've taken in the last 10 or 12 years have all been revenue reductions.
Well, Sandy, we're going to talk a little bit on the other side about the fact that there are, thousands and tens of thousands of billionaires and others who have not even paid any taxes or even done their taxes over extended periods of time. You keep talking about the only way to address these things are revenue, and yet Republicans don't want to address revenue. They don't want additional revenue, and all they want to do is cut. 844-967-2789 is the number. And I'm kind of, I think the American people, Sandy, don't even understand the magnitude of this and what's coming. 844-967-2789 is the number. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. And up next, news, weather, and sports. All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. It's Friday. It means Friday is my co-host, Sandy Williams. Let's go to the phone lines and Susan from Kenosha. Hey, good morning to you, Susan.
Oh, good morning. I just love you, Sandy, and you put things into perspective. And Sandy, I'm currently reading a book on Alexander Hamilton, and he talked about the various problems, particularly what we're going through right now. But I have a solution to our problem. Since Congress can't put together and work together to put a bill that benefits people, until they put a bill through that benefits people, we cut their salary in half. Just think how much money we'll save. And then if they continue on this way, we will take away their health insurance. Let them go and get a part-time job to supplement their health insurance. How's that? I think that's a very good idea.
Hey, Susan, the only thing is they would have to pass those laws themselves.
Right. It's they have a stranglehold on us. We can't do nothing to them, and they sit there and they waste our time and our money on frivolous things.
Oh, we
that
can't.
We wouldn't.
Susan, we can do something. Sandy, can't we not elect them?
Yeah, we can unelect them. Unfortunately, we aren't very vigilant. The process has sort of neutralized us or neutered us in our capacity to stand up for ourselves. And to that extent, Tom's admonition to us is right. We really have to take more seriously the responsibility we as each citizen have to vote our interests.
Yeah. Hey, Susan, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Tom from LA. Tom, go ahead.
Hey, Earl. First, just want to say that when anybody tells you that government is horrible or government is the problem, please, people, don't vote that person into office. That's a person that's not going to work very hard for government or for we the people. Just remember that. Second, Susan just brought up a really great point, Alexander Hamilton. And again, Sandy, I've just asked if you can tell us where we can find that quote that you gave last time, because I want to be able to find it on Google. And everybody out there, please go to selectacandidatequiz.com. It's basically a quiz that tells you from the policies that are out there who it is that you should be voting for. And we do have an axis of evil. It's Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Benjamin Netanyahu. And honestly, the people that are going to benefit from anything that's going on right now is going to be Iran, and if we don't, stop this from happening in Gaza.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. Sandy, there is a broader swath of people in this country who are not identifying with Democrat or Republican. They're identifying with independent. And so you would think that both Democrats and Republicans would start realizing that their numbers are getting smaller and smaller, and more Americans are not enamored with either party. And
there's a mathematical irony to that, though. You see, as people don't identify as Democrats, they no longer become the base for who it is that a Democrat has to appeal to get the nomination. And more similarly and more strikingly, the same is true on the Republican side. The more moderates decide that they are no longer identifying as Republicans, the more important it is for a Republican candidate to appeal to the conservative base. And we're watching that happen, aren't we? We're watching candidates appeal to what is called the base, which is the majority of the party that they're in, that they need to persuade in order to get nominated, not to get elected, but to get nominated. And for both parties, as independents become a larger share of the total electorate, that base is more disconnected from what it will take to get elected nationally than it is, but it's only connected then to what it takes to get a nomination. And that's been the irony of our politics, and that's what's been happening to increase the partisanship of our politics, is politicians are increasingly appealing to a base, which is not by any means a majority of the nation. It's only a majority of their shrinking party.
You know, Sandy, I was reading this article from of all people, George Will. Remember George Will?
I do.
And George Will, say what you will about George Will, no pun intended.
And I
But
will.
but George Will is a word master, and George Will, when he speaks, you know, unless you know unless you're Sandy Williams, you got to decipher all those terms that he uses. But he was pretty clear in what he was pointing to in today's Washington Post, Sandy, about what is happening with parties this year. And let me read a quick paragraph that George Will said. In 1920, the phrase "smoke-filled room" entered America's political lexicon when Republican politicians in Blackstone hotel rooms 2 blocks from Grant Park bestowed the nomination on Ohio Senator Warren G. Harding. His 26.2% margin of victory in the popular vote is the largest since widespread popular voting began in the 1820s. Evidently, the people liked the candidacy hatched in the smoke. This year, Republicans might, for the first time, give a third consecutive nomination to the same candidate. The GOP is a plucky party, undaunted by the fact that its hero has lost the popular vote twice, the second time by 7 million votes, as he was losing 6 of 7 swing states. 6 or 7 swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all but North Carolina, which he carried by 1.3%. Time was contested. States were more numerous. So Sandy, we forget what, Donald Trump and what he has wrought for Republicans, right? Even though you still see, and people keep talking as if, Donald Trump is a shoo-in. Donald Trump has not really appealed to enough of the American people. Do you think today is any different? Do you think this time around, what has Donald Trump said that makes it possible that people who rejected him before are now all of a sudden going to see Donald Trump as the panacea?
Well, we've had 2 different elections based on the Electoral College, okay? And the Electoral College is different than the popular vote because Donald Trump proved that in 2016 by losing the popular vote and winning the Electoral College. And however, this is all manifest proof of what I was talking about. We have candidates who are appealing to a base in their party that does not reflect a majority of the country by any stretch of the imagination. And the smoke-filled room, those guys used to be trying to predict what it is that would accomplish the national objective of winning an election. Okay, and so they compromised. They put forth candidates that they believed had the veritas to accomplish a national victory. Okay, they got beyond the notion of a base. This notion of a base has really become much more important in the context of elections in which advertisements and money are what hold sway, not the party. Parties have lost their capacity to name nominees in large respect, and nominees basically make themselves. They go out and raise money. They develop a popular image, and they win campaigns in primary states. And no longer do we have smoke-filled rooms. And maybe that might be kind of ironic, but it might be to our detriment.
You know, Sandy, Mitch McConnell has decided to step away.
Speaking of smoke-filled rooms, huh?
So, can you imagine what happens, the fight that's going to take place in the Republican Party with MAGA, who has been waiting on this? They've been wanting Mitch booted, Donald Trump for a long time. And the amazing thing to me, Sandy, is Mitch McConnell has done some things that have kind of helped Republicans. Think about it. When the United States Supreme Court seat was open, while Obama was president, who was it that prevented a Democrat, President Obama?
Yeah, Merrick Garland would be on the Supreme Court, but for what it is that was wrought by Mitch McConnell in terms of, and it was done, with great hypocrisy. He announced then that while it's never happened that we've approved a nominee to the Supreme Court in the last year of a presidential term, and then now we have Amy Coney Barrett on, who was approved 2 months before the end of Donald Trump's term, with Mitch McConnell's effort. Okay, so yeah, he did a lot to deliver, for instance, Supreme Court in the manner that was hoped for by the conservative Republicans. No, I mean, I think McConnell stepping down is the right thing, right? He's 82 years old. I've basically been a proponent of these old guys stepping aside, letting the new people come forward. But in the Republican Party, I think it's going to be an insight into what it is that's happening to that party, because of course it takes a majority of Republicans in the Senate to vote for the new leader, and that majority might well be responsive to the base, okay, this base that we talk about, which is the conservative base of the Republican Party. And so we'll end up with a new leader that is not reflective of a national view of things, but is only reflective of the most conservative side of the Republican Party.
So that conservative base of the Republican Party, Sandy, that we've seen all too much of lately, does it continue to, in your opinion, does it continue to destroy the future of the party, or does at some point in time the MAGA movement, if Trump is defeated again, does it die? Or
Well, I think parties are subject to Darwinian evolution, right? So I think the extent to which the MAGA movement might move the Republicans so far out of the mainstream that it fails to get to win elections to the U.S. Senate and to the presidency will have an impact on and will cause it to lose its grip on the party, I presume. If the Republican Party has a survival instinct, which I presume it does, it will move in the direction of survival. And what George Will was pointing out is the fact that the base of this conservative base of the Republican Party, the MAGA group, keeps nominating people who are in fact losers. They aren't winning elections.
Well, if you don't win elections, Sandy, what does that make you?
Makes you a loser.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Sandy said it. I did. 844-967-2789 is the number. You can join us. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show. It's Friday. These Fridays, my co-host Sandy Williams.
Oh boy. Oh God.
painted pony, let the spinning wheel spin. You got no money and you got no home. Spinning wheel all alone. Talking about your troubles and you never learn. Ride a painted pony, let the spinning wheel turn. Did you
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Last few minutes of a very rousing Sandy Williams show this Friday morning. Let's go to Don from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, Don. You say what?
Good morning. Hey, I enjoyed the show. Quick a comment. I was just going to say, so you said about if you don't win elections, you're considered a loser. I think that's what you said. So that would make Mandela Barnes a loser, huh?
Well, I mean, he's a loser in that particular race, the Senate race. He's won many other races.
I'm just kidding
Oh,
here.
yeah.
But it's a shame because that seat that was right for the picking. You know, we just didn't have the right candidate there. I do believe that Sarah Godlewski would have beaten him. You know, it would have been tight, but it would have been tight. That's just my opinion, you know. Okay, fellas.
Hey, Don,
have a
that's
nice
what we
weekend.
do. That's what we do on this show, opinions. Thank you very much for the call. You know, though, Sandy, if just from where we are, you just keep watching year after year after year in elections and less people are voting and less people feel like their votes matter. Long term, Sandy, we got to figure out a way to fix this, don't we?
Well, you know, the Biden election 2020, actually a record number of people voted. That was a big turnout. I think it was because of the ease of voting. You know, I think we could do a lot of things to make voting, you know, in Australia, they vote on Sunday, I think, or Saturday, and it's mandatory. You actually have to pay a fine if they don't vote. Um, I think we should do everything we can to get a turnout. I suspect there's one party that would not favor taking steps to make sure that everybody turns out. I think that's part of the theory behind the stolen election. I think the real fact of the 2020 election was that a lot of people turned out, more people turned out, and it resulted in a different outcome than we had in 2016.
You know, Sandy, several years ago, you and I were having a dialogue, and you talked about the fact that we've long since kind of grown beyond two parties. Do you foresee that changing?
It's hard with our electoral college system the way it is, and it's not a parliamentary system where the electoral college is expected to exercise discretion in the process of how they vote. So it gets harder because when you have multiple parties, you'll end up with an unlikelihood of having an electoral college majority, which will then shift things into the House of Representatives. And you know, at that point, it is parliamentary. So if you have an election decided by the House of Representatives and you have multiple parties, maybe it works.
Hey, Sandy, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well,
You
I just
know,
no,
go
you
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I'm going to change the subject quickly. So the Republicans finally got Hunter Biden on the stand, and he threw him some curveballs. And they were asking him about his issues. He said, "Well, what about Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner? You know, you want to talk about me? What about Jared Kushner? What about?" And they clearly were kind of flummoxed. I guess they thought it was going to be easy. They thought they were going to get him on the stand and he was just going to knuckle under. But what are they expecting to get?
I think they just want to get in the news. They want to have news pieces that discuss Hunter Biden and the foibles of Hunter Biden in the hopes that it will erode support for Joe Biden. And I suspect it does to some extent, but I think this is clearly a situation that is blown up in their face, and that they've been beating this drum quietly, indicating that at some point it'll start being a loud drum beat that'll actually have some merit. And I think what's happened is the loud drum beat is never going to happen because there is nothing to support it.
Gene, quickly. Good morning. Quickly, Gene. You say what?
Thank you guys for this great show. And it's only through education like yours and others on this station that people are going to understand what the devil's going on, because they're so busy with their lives, and listening to you guys is just wonderful. And people need to get their butts out and vote out the people that are working to destroy our government and our country, because it's just my biased opinion. I've been watching for so long. You can't bomb us and things like that, but what you do is you put people in that won't vote, pass laws, do a budget, go after the people that are doing the right thing, and so that's why we need to get out and vote, and that's why you're so wonderful and educational for everybody. Thank you so much for your work and your time, and have a good weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Gene, thank you very much for that call. Hey, Calvin, print that. Anyway, Sandy, man, I don't know what happened to the time. Always good to hang out with you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be back in Milwaukee. See you on Tuesday.
Yeah, and it's going to be kind of balmy for us.
I think
60
so.
degrees this weekend.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's just normal winter weather.
Yeah.
No.
All right, we got to run. Thank you very much, man. Be safe. See you on the other side. Thank everybody who made the show go, Calvin, this entire week. As always, we couldn't do it without you. Up next, Greg Bach and Jane Matnair and Matnair on Air. Have a great weekend. See you guys on Monday.